Hey man, welcome back to Rev's Garage. We're excited to be here. Sorry it's been a little while. I keep saying I'm going to do every week, but we had some glitches with the old phone. Unless you wanted to be twitchy the whole time you were watching, I figured it's better if we just wait till we get another phone, which we did. This one doesn't glitch. So cool. So back to the drawing board and what we're doing. In the month, we had a lot going on, so I didn't really end up doing anything really in the garage. I've only been doing stuff the last couple of days. So I'm going to get you caught up on what we're up to and what we're doing. Uh, basically, uh, today, what I want to show everyone what to do, and this is something that is good maintenance. So Zeke, when you get your boat someday, I mean, you got to understand Zeke is 2 years old. I mean, he's two, so he's not getting a boat for probably another 15 years from Grandpa. So just but he needs to know this stuff someday. He did enjoy the boat on vacation, so it was a lot of fun. But maintenance on your boat trailer and maintenance on your boat are really important things. That light was pretty bright. So what we want to do is show you how to repack the bearings with grease on your boat trailer hubs. It's something that's really important and you need to do because one, you're taking in and out of water and metal rust. And if the grease gets washed out or the grease gets pushed out, there are some things I'm going to show you. And they're pretty common with boat trailers. They're called bearing buddies, and they're like little caps that go on and push grease through. But what happens is if you put a lot of grease into that situation a lot, it'll actually push out the seals and make a mess on your rims and your trailer. So you have to be careful. You have to keep things looking good and fresh, so you don't want grease all over everything. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take a little walk, and then I'll show you on the trailer what we're doing. Okay, this is the tire on the boat, obviously. If you didn't know what this was, you should probably have a boat. Just saying. But if you get a little closer here, as we get closer, this here is our hub, which the tire hooks to. And I'll show you a breakdown of that in the garage, what this hub is. This is your axle nut. This is your axle. And I'm going to show on the other side of the trailer as well what this all does. But this actually is where the grease goes in those bearings, and that pushes out towards the inside of the axle. And I'm going to break it down what goes on. But we need to take this all off. We've already done it on the other side, so I'm going to show it to you broken down. So we're going to take all this off and then show you what we're going to do and then how to do it. It's pretty important maintenance. You probably should do it every couple of years. So I'm going to show you. Okay. This is the side that I've already taken off. So this is your axle. This is where your seal rides. There's a ridge. Let me get a little closer. See how the ridge it bumps up? And your bearing rides here, and your seal rides on this part here. What happens is if that seal goes bad, then grease gets all over up in here and actually gets on the tire. And that's the one thing we don't want. But we don't want to lose our grease because then our bearings go bad and then we have a lot of trouble riding down the road. So first thing is we take the hub off to reveal the axle. We clean that off, wipe that off with a rag really good so you can make sure all this is good, make sure all this is good so it's in good condition and we don't have any trouble. So just make sure you do that. Okay, this is the hub. So this is what we actually took off. See how that's the same? This is what the axle goes through here. And these are the races that the bearings ride on in here. And this is where the cap goes, the bearing buddy that I was telling you about. And this here, you flip this over, and this is where the seal goes, right there, that rides on that piece, okay? Now, that's problematic if that seal goes bad. That seal keeps all the grease in the bearings. So we had a long battle. These are new seals, and it took quite a long time to get those seals. In fact, it took all day. I had to go to 3 different parts stores, pain in the butt, but we finally got it. So basically, what we got to do is we got the bearings out, and we cleaned up in here, but that rough metal in there is like little chunks of it are coming off. So I'm going to deburr that with something. I haven't found anything yet. think I'm going to try to get my Dremel in there. And if I do that, I'll show you. If not, we'll probably just get a file and rasp it out, which that's no fun to watch. And basically, sorry, I wanted to show you what the bearings look like. See a little focus there. These are called a tapered bearing. So they taper and they ride in this race in here, which is tapered, and they pinch together with a bolt that holds them on, that bolt I showed you before, and that rides the tire that's hooked, bolted to this, rides on that axle and gives a nice smooth ride. Well, if this bearing goes bad, everything wobbles, and if I've seen them where the bearings have spent, and then the wheel almost can fall off, especially if you're not paying attention, especially if you're doing 65, 70 down the highway with a boat trailer, which you're not supposed to really do that fast, but we do because we're crazy. And that's what crazy people do. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to take some brake cleaner. We're going to clean these bearings up really good. We already did the brake cleaner and cleaned out that hub really good. It's going to clean everything up. And then I'm going to show you how to grease a bearing. And that's just downright exciting if you've never seen a bearing greased. I'm just kidding. It's not exciting. But it is important, and it is something that you should know how to do. I don't enjoy it. I find it incredibly boring. I find it to be like, unless you like playing in grease. Some people like playing in grease. I don't know. You a grease monkey? That's where they got their name Grease Monkey, because they grease all over themselves when mechanics, the old school ones. But new school ones, we all wear rubber gloves, kind of like surgeons. We want to feel like we're more important. So we wear rubber gloves. I'm just kidding. We wear rubber gloves because we don't want to get that all over our hands, because according to the Surgeon General, it causes cancer. It wasn't a joke. It really does. But if you wipe it off, you're okay. But I want to show you this other thing. This is a bearing buddy. Okay, and how that works is you put that on the hub, on the other side of the hub. It'd be like this side. This bearing buddy goes like this. Oh, sorry, upside down. It goes like this. And that, see how it sits on there? And you pound that on, it's a cap. And then you put grease in here. And I'll show you on this new one, because I got new ones. My neighbor Cam hooked me up. It's got a spring in there that pushes that cap down towards the axle. So then it pushes grease, which is in here, it pushes it towards the axle and into the bearing. So if any water comes in, it keeps pressure on it and doesn't allow it to go in there. So that's why it's a good idea. But it also just keeps a little pressure on that and keeps fresh grease in, and so nothing could come in past that seal. If you have good seals, you shouldn't have an issue with this. And that's why I got new seals, because I didn't want to have an issue with this. I don't want to have any problems. So just want to take a second and thank you for picking it back up, Rev's Garage. If you have a chance, this is what it is. One of the things that is really important, and I always say this, and I'm going to tell, this is for Zeke too, that anytime you're working on something that is a bearing or a carburetor or anything, you want to get as clean as possible before you start putting it back together. You want no little dirts or microscopic pieces of metal or anything, because all that does is create problems. Those bearings are, they look pretty tough. They're pretty good sized rollers. But what happens is, if dirt gets in there, it just wears them out, and it makes it so they don't work. So, we try to get all that we can out. So I'm going to take a moment here and set things up, and then we'll show you how to pack a bearing. Okay, generally speaking, what you want to do, did you remember I showed you the bearings? They were all greasy. I took some brake cleaner and just cleaned them up as best I can. Just got them as clean as you can. So you can inspect the bearings, make sure there's no bearings that are loose. They ride pretty good. Most bearings, when there's a little pressure on them, they're good. So these are good. They set in here good. This is nice and clean. And they're smooth, nice. So, and now, generally speaking, like this was the outside bearing, so you want to keep that outside. This was the inside bearing, so you want to keep that on the inside. This one here was the one that went close to the seal, so I put it with the seal. This one here was closest to the washer, which is the outside. of the hub, so I kept that closest to that. So now we're gonna sit down and grease these puppies. Okay, so you take your bearing, it's clean. This is what it is right here. Okay. Then you take this grease. I don't have anyone watching the camera, so just a high temperature axle grease, brake grease, whatever. Not brake grease. What the heck am I talking about? It's just a premium high temperature grease. So basically, you want to take this and well, first before I do that, I gotta do one more thing. I gotta glove the other hand. Because the one thing you want to do is have all your hands gloved when you're doing this, because it is a messy. Old school, you just do it in your hand. But now they have gloves. Gloves are a wonderful thing. So just take your rubber glove. You can do a rectal exam as well. You don't want that, Zeke. You don't want rectal exams, bud. So basically, you're gonna dip your bearing right in the grease. Good glop of it right on there. And you're gonna put it right in your hand, just like this. Then you're gonna work the edge of the bearing. You're gonna work that grease in. Just stuff it in there. Just keep stuffing it like this. Stuffing it like this. I don't know if you can see that. See how you're just going like this? You're just working it in. Then you just work it in. Just scrape a little off, work it in. Just keep working it in. Just like that. Just keep working it in. Working it in. Working it in. Until it starts coming out this side. I don't know if you can see that. But you look at that little crack there, and if the grease starts scooching out there, then you know you've got enough in there. And just keep doing it. And you can slop that grease out of there. Just keep her going. Just work it. Work it. Work it. Just keep working it in. So that bearing is just a slathering wonderment of grease. And just work it in. I usually do this with my fingers too after working it with my palm of my hand. I'll take it and just squeeze it in a little extra just to make sure we got a good coverage. If I see some place that looks a little dry, maybe I'll squish a little more in there. Force it in. Force it in. So one of the things that you want to do, and what I'll probably do is set this on the lid of the bearing grease once I get this. And you only want to work it, really, you only want to work it one way, because you can't, on the back side of that, if you can see that, on the back side of that bearing, there's not really a crack to work it in through there. So just always push it through this side of the wide side of the bearing and just work it in. You could spend a good amount of time working it in. It's fine. You know, anything worth lubing up is worth time lubing up. Because, you know, lube is king. You can think whatever you want. Lube is king. Lube makes the world go round. Grease, oil, without it, we don't survive and things break down. So make sure you're all greased. Grease, grease, grease. Nice amount of grease in there. Just keep pushing it and working it in until that just looks like it's like just feeling good. It's like work it a little bit, work it around. Then I get a little dip for good measure, coat it, and just coat that sucker with grease. Then I'll set it on the lid, and then I'll grab the other one and do the same thing. Take a crap load of grease and then just work it. You can see why you wear gloves. That way you can be as messy as you want. And just work it in. Work it around, work it in, scrape your hand. Now, back in the day before gloves were common, this was just like, it was just a gooey mess. This grease is like sticky. So, if you didn't see it. But you just work it in, scrape it right into that bearing, right nice and good, nice and looby doobed. Have a good time with it. Hey, if you're playing with the grease, might as well have a good time with it. Just like make it a game. Like see how clean you can get your glove with each scrape. That's just weird. Don't do that. So you just work it in. I know it's time consuming a little bit. The more grease, you can never get enough in a bearing. You can really never get enough lubrication because you want it to not break down. You don't want it to have issues when you're going down the road. So just lube it really good. Now this one, remember I said this was the one, I said there's a front and the back. Well, this one's the front. So just remember what it is, because basically the bearings have been worn into the races inside the hub, so they're like familiar with the race that they're in. That's their home. They like it. They like going to their home, like a good putt. When you putt, get in your home, as Happy Gilmore would say. Go to your house. Go to your home. Well, that's what these bearings like. They like going into the same races they came out of, because it's a good time. All right. And that is a greased bearing, Wonderment. And that's how we do it. And we'll set that over to the side. Good luck getting the gloves off. You're going to get dirty no matter what you do. But that's why you wear gloves, my friends. Okay, we finished up greasing those bearings, and then basically what you have to do is put everything back together in reverse order of how you took it off. Now, most of what I showed you is pretty easy. Now, if you get stuck doing this, like if you go, oh man, I don't know how tight to do the nut putting on the axle again. Well, here's the deal. If you're scared of doing this, then pay someone to do it. Because if you think you can handle it, and you think you can follow YouTube directions, well, sometimes just watching a video on YouTube isn't enough. You have to have a feel for things. Because when you put this bearing all back together, you put the bearings in there, you put the seal in the back, like I showed you where the seal goes, then you put the hub onto the axle, then you put the washer on so it holds that front bearing on, then you put the nut on, and then you tighten it down. You have to tighten it just enough, and you have to be able to feel that and know how tight that is. So basically, you want it to spin freely, but not be loose. Spin freely, but not be loose. So you tighten it up so it's not spinning, like it's a little bit to spin it, and back it up just a little bit so it spins freely, but it's not wobbly and loose. And then on that nut, there's actually a little hole that you put a cotter pin through, which I didn't show you to take that out, but you got to put that cotter pin in to make sure that nut stays in place so it can't back out and so you don't lose your wheel. So it's not super difficult to figure out, but it's just something that you should know. Now, anything I tell you to do involving your trailer or your car, know this, that if you're uncomfortable doing this, like even if you can follow directions, if your comfort level is, well, I'm not sure, then you probably should pay a professional to do it. And that's the one thing I feel comfortable taking stuff apart and putting it back together because my mind works that way. It's how it works. I can take an engine apart and I can put it back together. I have a car, it's been apart for 1.5 years. I can go put it back together because I can't remember your name, but I can remember how to put that motor back together. So it's kind of funny. But if you're not comfortable with something, don't even try to do it until you get a comfort level with and become very familiar with it. I'm not saying don't try things because that's how you learn. But if you're like, you get to the point where you're like, oh man, I'm really uncomfortable with this. This is something easy. So if your comfort level is, if you're blown out of the water by this and you don't think you're comfortable enough to do it, then you probably shouldn't do mechanical things. You should probably just stay in your house and sit on your couch and watch YouTube videos like you're doing now. But that's not, That wasn't nice. I shouldn't have said that because you're watching this, and thank you. I appreciate it. But you put it all back together. You put the bearing buddy on the outside, and the bearing buddies actually have little caps that you put on them. So you put those on to keep the dirt out. And once you keep the dirt out of the bearing, it'll last. Like I said, I haven't done this on this trailer since I had it, and it sat for 25 years. And I just got around to doing it, which is probably sad on my part. And I didn't have any issues. So I just don't want any issues. I had a bearing go last time I went on vacation to Black Lake. I had a bearing go. So I had to replace the bearing while I was in the parking lot right before I left. Unfortunately, I had one on me so I could take care of it. But normally you don't have one on you. And you have to go to an auto parts store half hour away and try to figure it out on the fly. So it's a good idea to do this stuff. It's preventative, and it's not really that hard. And it's, you watch me do it. It took 5 minutes per bearing. It's not a big deal, and it's good to do. One of the things that I want to just let you know is we've been doing some other stuff too. I'll give you a little brief heads up on what we're doing. Hey, look, pieces of wood. Oh, there it is. There's the hole for cornhole. I made some cornhole boards. Those are the legs. And basically, I wanted to show you these. Now, cornhole boards, you can look up. I'm not going to show you how to make them because that's pointless, because everyone shows you how to make them. You can look up directions. There's no sense of making another video like that. So what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to put vinyl graphics on here. I'm going to put a vinyl graphic on. And so this is what I tried so far. And I, my brother and I were talking about it. He works with these. He's done a couple cornhole boards. So basically what we did is I had some marine grade plywood left over from my boat. And I might make a video about how I redid my boat, because that was kind of fun. And that'll be from pictures, so it won't be like a cool video. But I had some marine grade plywood left over, so I used that for the tops of these, and I had some pressure treated 2x6 that I split down the middle and made sides and bottoms and everything. So these are like super heavy, so I wouldn't even show you how to make these because they're not like super mobile. They're going to be like you take them out for the week on vacation and leave them out. And who cares if they get wet, because they're all pressure treated. But what I want to show you is the graphics I'm going to put on are going to be real sweet. So I want to show you that. And that's more what I want to show, because I actually cut my own vinyl. So I'm going to show you how I cut my own vinyl and how I do stuff. So maybe you might want to buy some vinyl graphics from me. So that's something that's coming up, and that's pretty cool. Just remember, Zeke, Grandpa loves you, and everyone else, well, I love you too, but God loves you more. So stay real, and we'll talk to you later.